All right, good afternoon. I know we might have a couple of people that are still trickling in. Thanks for joining us in worship today, and thanks to Candace and the volunteers, our women's ministry team who helped coordinate the luncheon, even as they were flexible in us moving upstairs so that it was a little bit warmer than the gymnasium. On the table in the back are our 2025 annual reports. These are also going to serve as your guidebooks for today's meetings. We technically will have two meetings here back to back, but you're not going to be dismissed in between. There is childcare for kids down in the gymnasium. We have Miss Melissa Duggan and some youth helpers down there to help them. So on pages 26 and 27, or on page 26 of your 2025 report, are the dockets for today's meetings. We'll begin with a meeting of the corporation of the church. To vote in the corporation meeting, you need to be a member of faith who is 18 years or older. When I come back up and we switch to the congregational meeting, you need to be a member of Faith Church who is 16 years or older. So we have two church members who will get the vote when we switch to the congregational meeting. Our quorum, we have 224 voting members, and so we have a quorum of 10%, so we need 23 members here for our corporation meeting, and we need 1/6 of our congregation here, so 38 members when we switch to our corporation meeting. Today's meeting will be live streamed for those that weren't able to physically join us today. At the very end of the congregational meeting, when there's opportunity for you to raise questions or bring concerns from the floor, we will turn off the live stream. That way, the fact that it will no longer be recorded, it won't limit debate or your freedom as a church member to raise questions. If you're not a member, you're welcome to stay here, listen to what happens. There is no point that I anticipate we will need to excuse non-members. You just won't, if you're not officially a member, you won't vote in any of the things we do. All right, so before we call either meeting to order, does anybody have a question? All right. Then I'm going to invite the chairman of our deacons, Deacon Rick Schumeyer, who in his role also serves as a trustee. And so as a trustee of the corporation, he's going to call to order our meeting of the corporation.
The 2026 meeting of the Corporation of Faith Presbyterian Church. Let me open with some prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this church and for those of us who are deacons or elders for the opportunities to serve you in that capacity. Thank you for the things you're doing throughout the year and in the coming years in this church, the different ministries. Lord, I pray that you be with the meeting today. Pray that the information is presented clearly, and pray these things in your name. Amen. All right, as Kevin said, for the corporation meeting, we need 23 members. I find that a quorum is present. At this point, I would entertain a motion to elect a secretary for this meeting, and I should note that if someone nominated Ethan Dunham, that would work really well. So moved, and I see a second. All in favor? Motion carries. The next item is the approval of the minutes from last year, so the minutes of the January 26th, 2025 meeting. The minutes are also in the report. I'll give everyone a little bit of time to look through that if they haven't done so already, but I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from last year's meeting. I see a motion. I see a second. All in favor? All right, that motion carries. All right, the next is the Mercy Ministry update. As you see in our report, last year we gave over $14,000 in direct financial assistance from the Deacons Fund This goes to a variety of needs, both with members of the community as well as members of our church. Generally, this helps with physical needs like food, transportation, housing expenses, utilities, medical expenses. And the important thing to note is that there's always a gospel-centered conversation that occurs in this process. And so that's always very encouraging to hear about that. And again, if you know of members in the community or members in the congregation that are in need, please reach out to one of the deacons. All right, at this time, this would be normally when our treasurer would give the treasury report. Daryl Nagley is our treasurer. He would have been here last week, is unable to be here this week, but he has kindly prepared a video presentation, which we will now see.
Good afternoon, Faith Church. I'm joining you today via video as I'm out of town, and I'm hopeful this method will still be a successful way of presenting last year's Treasurer's Report. Before getting into the details of the report, I wanted to give you a high-level summary of the overall finances of the church. Faith Church remains in a strong position financially. In 2025, we again saw the generosity of the church as giving targets were met and more than sufficient to cover expenses for the year. We are a church that has been blessed through generations by not having to take on debt to build or maintain our facilities. That means 100% of your giving is directly used for the operation of the church, its staff, our ministries, and for missions. Getting into the details of the report, I'll be starting on page 31 with the income and expenses of the 2025 budget. Beginning in the income section with contributions, as I mentioned, we did meet and exceed our giving target for the year. Most of the year, we were tracking about 5 to 10% behind budget, but strong giving in December helped reverse the deficit and end the year with a surplus of over $48,000. We have a long-standing tradition at Faith of allocating at least 50% of any surplus and giving directly to missions. This session has already met and directed that $25,000 of the surplus will be moved to our designated missions fund. Interest income for the year exceeded budget by $10,000. This was anticipated for the year. We have intentionally held the budget lower in this category, anticipating that current interest rates for CDs will be moving downward over time. The preschool share portion is the income that we receive from the preschool operations for the use of our facility. Additionally, there was small favorability in the rentals line. Moving to the expense section of the budget, I won't touch on each individual line, but will highlight some areas that had the largest variances. In the ministry section, we were over budget by about $3,500 for the year. The largest variance was in the music line, where we were over by $4,500. About half of this variance was anticipated going into the year. We were aware of some anticipated increases and failed to adjust the budget accordingly. The remaining increase was related to some expensive sound equipment that was purchased at year-end to aid in our contemporary worship. Elsewhere in the ministry category, we were over in our children's ministry account due to additional events this year. These overages were partially offset by savings in Christian education and the fellowship budgets. Moving down to the ministry support section, we were over budget by about $5,200 for the year. The largest variance here was in computers and IT. And this was driven by the purchase of 3 new computers that were not originally planned for the year. The subscription line was also over in this category, which is due to utilizing the Planning Center software at a higher rate than we have historically used. We've seen increases in office supply expenses this year due to just general prices increases from normal usage, and we've adjusted our 2026 budgets to reflect this new normal. The personnel category, which contains expenses for our staff salaries, benefits, and retirement plans, is our largest expense category, and overall was favorable for the year by over $6,000. Savings were realized here by lower travel than what is typically experienced, and there were also savings in the general pastor's expense line. Moving into the operations category of the budget, the overall category was over budget by about $9,500. This was driven by maintenance and energy. The maintenance category is our largest area of spending, excluding personnel costs, and it only covers the maintenance. It not only covers the maintenance, upkeep, and cleaning of the entire church, but also our 3 church-owned manses. Our largest expenses typically are related to the HVAC system, parking lot and sidewalk maintenance and repair, cleaning, painting, fire system maintenance, and exterior groundskeeping. Also, to get a fuller picture of the facility work over the past year, please read through the list of projects on page 21 of the report. Some of those were paid for through the maintenance budget, some through our capital budget, and some through designated gifts, but it does give a clearer picture of the amount of work that has happened recently. Back to the operations budget, the other line that was over this past year was for energy. Our payments to Delmarva are the single largest vendor payments that we make each year, so we obviously keep a close eye on that, and we were still over budget by a few $1,000s. Our final category is missions. We were favorable in this budget by $2,900. A majority of this favorability is related to the youth missions not spending their full allocation in this year. I need to confirm with the pastors offline, but historically when this has happened, we have moved that saved money to the designated youth fund to help offset expenses in years where the missions trip is much more expensive. So I believe that'll happen again in this case. So in total, for the annual church budget, our income was favorable to budget by over $59,000, and our expenses were unfavorable by a little over $9,000, yielding net favorability for the year of just over $50,000. Again, $25,000 of this favorability will be allocated to designated missions. We'll now move back one page in the report. What we just finished reviewing on page 31 was the annual budget. Page 30 is a broader view of all the finances that the church oversees. It contains the annual budget that we just reviewed, but also several other designated and restricted accounts. There are several columns on this sheet, so let me help orient you. The various funds that we track are listed horizontally down the left side of the page. I'm sorry, vertically down the left side of the page. The first column moving across the top is the beginning balance. If you happen to have a copy of last year's report, you'll see that last year's ending balance is this year's beginning balance. So that's our starting point for the year. Next, there's an adjustments column. There are a few expenses or income items that happen throughout the year that don't fit neatly into any of the other categories. For instance, I talked about how we allocate a portion of the additional giving this past year to designated missions. Well, that happened in the previous year as well. The session authorized $30,000 to be moved to missions. So that came out of the general church line and moved into designated missions. And you'll see a few adjustments like that in this column. The next columns are income and expenses for the year. And then that all sums up to a new ending balance. The final column shows the change between the beginning and the end. The first fund is general church. The two primary adjustments in this category are the monies transferred to missions and a unique expense for the year at 800 Marsh Road, where we replaced the roof of that manse. The income and expenses will tie directly to the numbers on page 1 for the annual budget. And so for the year, this account had a net increase of $3,800. Capital Improvements Fund is next. The income here is from two sources. The first one is part of our annual operations budget, which allocates about $22,000 to help fund this account. And the second source is through individual dedicated gifts to help fund unique projects. The expenses for this year included the new small parking lot north of the church building, a new light pole for the bottom parking lot, and renovations at the 722 Marsh Road manse. All of these expenses were paid for by designated gifts. The deacon's goal for the Capital Improvements Fund is to allow it to grow over several years, as we know there are large capital expenses coming in future years that we need to be prepared for. The next fund is memorials, and the one expense here was to refurb the sanctuary piano, which needed a significant renovation after 20 years of use. The deacon's fund is next, and you've already heard some of the details on that today. The church planning fund is from a designated gift years ago and is being held for a church plant in Delaware. Next is designated missions. This account is completely separate from the missions in our annual budget, which is around $150,000. This account is funded through two sources. One, we already talked about how at least half of any overages in our giving budget transfers here. And you'll see that with the $30,000 adjustment line from 2024 surplus that transferred over. The second source is when you, as a congregant, identify specific giving for missions. If you select missions in the drop-down online or write it in your check, those monies will go into this account. Last year, our missions committee was able to direct over $50,000 in additional giving to our missionaries. Designated youth missions and adult missions both had only very minor changes for the year. The concert series and organ refurbishment line is the next fund. Typically, we only see a few $1,000s of income and expenses here, but in 2025, there was an initiative to raise $60,000 for a very significant upgrade to our organ. Those funds are reflected in the income column, and the first payment for that work has happened in 2025. The second payment will happen this year in 2026 when the work is actually performed. The Faith Outreach account is funded by an external grant, and this is the account that pays for our WDEL radio programming, as well as many of our special service postcard mailings and Faith Explored. While the income does look lower last year than some previous years, we did receive a grant right at year end, which will be reflected in our 2026 budget year. The seminary scholarship is used to offset some of the tuition costs of our seminary students, and we had expenses this year of just over $10,000. The sanctuary, seniors, and foster closet funds had only minimal changes for the year. Our van fund shows a large expense for the year. A designated gift was given in 2024 for the purchase of a van, but that purchase did not happen until 2025. Moving forward, we anticipate seeing only very small income and expenses in this fund. The pastor's gift fund is set up to collect gifts designated for the pastors at year end. This is a pass-through account and is always zeroed out by the end of January each year. Moving to the preschool section, our preschool and daycare is headed by Ann Barlow and Emily Kirchner. Again, had a very strong year in 2025. Ann manages her budgets very closely and is always looking for ways to grow the school and maintain the strong biblical influence that they have with the children and the families that attend. The preschool ended the year with a surplus of $29,000. The last line under preschool is the stabilization grants. This fund originated with grants from the state of Delaware to help maintain and grow preschools like ours. We received another grant of $55,000 this year, bringing our total grant balance to $151,000. These truly are grant monies and do not need to be repaid. We do not currently have any large earmarks for these funds, but they are available for when future funds or future needs arise. In summary for the report, the total funds that we oversee has grown from $1,118,000 to a new ending balance of $1,132,000, an increase of $14,000 for the year. We feel blessed to be in a position that we are with no debt and with adequate reserves. Most years, this year included, I point out that it's important not just to look at the bottom line number, but understand the makeup of the various funds. The first three lines on this report, general church, capital improvements, and memorials, are the accounts that the session and diaconate have discretionary control over. The other funds, such as designated missions, deacons, church planning, outreach, etc., are all funded by designated gifts that have been given to the church to manage and disperse, but they must be used for the intent of the original giver. That is the end of my report. I thank you for your attention today, and I'm confident that if you have any questions, Rick or Kevin will be happy to entertain them at this time. Thank you.
here at Faith, for the generations that have taught us the gospel in Sunday school and kids club, that have made the gospel known here in the Faith pulpit, for missionaries that have given lifetimes, and we've seen generations of missionaries go from this congregation. And so, Lord, remind us of your goodness. Let us celebrate with joy and gratitude all that you have done. Father in heaven, we come praying in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. All right, we have a quorum for our meeting. As I mentioned, we need, with a church our size, our Book of Church Order requires that we have 1/6 of the membership present for a congregational meeting. With 224 members, we need 38 of you here. We have more than that. The docket is in front of you on page 26, and so we need a motion to approve the docket. And those of you that are eagle-eyed, you see that it looks similar to the dockets of years past. So I saw a motion in the back. It needs a second. We see a second back here. Questions or additions, corrections to the docket? All right. All those in favor of approving the docket on page 26 say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. All right. We also need to elect a clerk. It is often the pattern to elect the clerk of the session, since he is tasked with keeping track of all of our minutes through the year. It means he would have these minutes in his other pile of minutes. So I would entertain if somebody else really wants to do it, you can just get the minutes to Ethan when you're done. But I would entertain a motion that we elect Ethan Dunham as the clerk. So I hear a motion and a second. Are there any other nominations for our clerk? All right, hearing none, all those in favor of electing Ethan Dunham, our clerk of session, as the clerk of the congregational meeting for 2026, say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. All right, that motion carries. We have the minutes of last year's meeting, and Ethan, we did it. When we started, January 25th, 2026, and January 26th, 2025, and I think we got them right every place that they're printed in your bulletin. So we're turning to the January 26th, 2025 minutes, which are on pages 28 and 29. So let me give you a moment to review those minutes. Those are on pages 28 and 29. We need a motion to approve the 2025 congregational meeting minutes. I hear the motion. It needs a second. I see a second in the back. Are there any additions or corrections or questions as you look at the 2025 meeting minutes? All right, hearing none. Is that because you're not ready to vote or because you are ready to vote? You're ready to vote. All right. All of those in favor of approving the 2025 congregational meeting minutes say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That motion carries. All right. We come to perhaps the most significant thing we do in our annual meeting. It is useful for us to review the budget, but the election of elders and deacons is a significant part of what we accomplish as a congregation in our annual meeting. The candidates for office, their bios have been presented to you in the bulletin for the last month or so, or more than the last month. They are on pages 22 and 23 in our annual report. And I hope as you look at the list of names that this is an encouragement to you. The elders and deacons have been praying. We've been doing training over the course of several years, and I think we see the fruit of that in new officer candidates being presented before you. Several of the candidates are Elder Jay Hetler, Elder Harold Naylor, Elder Bill Trotman, and Deacon Jason Hancock are already ordained and have previously served. Jay and Bill and Jason returning from sabbaticals. But we have a new elder candidate in David Jardinier. are recently retired. So his name is no longer on the back of the church bulletin. So we're going to, as a official paid musician here at the church, but he, in completing the training, is willing to serve as an elder. We also have new deacon candidates, Dan Jones, Eric McClure, and Drew Smith. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so go ahead. If you're a candidate, one of the 8 candidates who is listed for office, if you would please stand, that lets your faces get connected to you as candidates. All right. Thank you. You can be seated. We're also, I want to extend thanks on behalf of the congregation to our officers who are have completed terms of service. Ethan Dunham completed, actually, you voted last year to have him, for us to stagger the terms, so he completed an additional year and is now, will step into his sabbatical. I do hope that while we have 4 new 4 elders and 4 deacons starting terms, that we will work to stagger them better before we get 6 years from now and realize, uh-oh, we didn't plan far enough ahead. Frank?
Can you just explain briefly the voting?
Yep, I'm getting there. I still have other officers to thank. Yeah, we also have 3 deacons that are completing their terms: Deacon Nate Bird, Deacon Daryl Negley, and Deacon Rick Schumeyer. Daryl and Rick taking a sabbatical. Daryl, though, while on sabbatical, is unable to be the treasurer because the treasurer is required constitutionally to be a member of the diaconate. But the diaconate can appoint an assistant treasurer, and Daryl has volunteered to be the assistant treasurer who will then make a report through the treasurer to us. So Daryl is giving up the title and keeping all of the work, which is the opposite way it's supposed to go, right? You're supposed to take on greater titles. Now, the ballots that you have in front of you are ballots for, I have a copy of one here. The session is recommending that you vote for all 8 candidates. That you put a check mark, an X through the little box next to all 8 names. All right? We have space for 4 elders, 4 deacons to be added to our boards. The recommendation is that you vote for all 8. If you leave it blank as a no vote, or if you are abstaining from voting for that candidate, because a no and an abstention have the same function when we count them up. If you want to vote for no one on the ballot, you are going to turn in your blank ballot. That means if you have an extra ballot in your row, don't turn it back in, all right? Or crumple it up, hand it to one of the officers who's gathering the ballots, and let them know this is an extra, this is not a ballot. Because a blank ballot turned back in is the equivalent of 8 no votes. All right, so if you intend to vote no, like if your conscience compels you to vote no, then turn in a blank ballot. But the recommendation of the session is that you check all 8 boxes and vote yes for all of the candidates. All right? So if you want to fold it once, hamburger way, not hot dog way. I don't know that it matters. Yes, are there questions?
Would it be appropriate to mention how many votes a person needs to get?
Yes, so a majority vote is required for any officer, but if we are close, like if one of the candidates is close, like having received a bare majority, then it will be my responsibility as the moderator to convince the majority to give up the yes vote to the minority for the sake of the peace of the church. All right? So if 51% of you vote yes, I'm going to come back and try and convince you for the sake of the 49% to not put that candidate in office. In my years as senior pastor, I have never had to undertake that responsibility because we have always had significant majorities for that. So, but it requires a majority vote. If you are a member of Faith Church, not currently under discipline by the church, and you are 16 years or older, you get a vote, which means I do not get a vote. Pastor Jim Brown, Pastor Mike Urick do not get votes. We are members technically of Presbyterian, so we do not vote here, although Mike and I do vote at the session, having been voted for you. Yes, Reverend Brown.
For the historical record, we had a case like the one that you described
Yes.
years ago, but the previous moderator was not an ecclesiastical lawyer as you are. And so we were not able to do what you just described.
All right. So previously, in the 40-year history of Jim Brown's ministry here, we have had a scenario where there was a close vote for an officer. Faith Church has had 6 senior pastors in 90 years. I've moved into 4th place for longest serving senior pastor. All right? But to be fair, I passed the one whose short tenure was marred by immorality. And I only pass our founding pastor because he was so close to retirement by the time he started Faith Church that if we counted the time that he was pastor of First and Central, I'm still in 5th place. But at 13 and a half years, I am the 4th longest serving pastor of Faith Church, and we have to double that before I get much higher on the list.
Well, your tenure's longer, your whole tenure, than my previous boss. So you have 4 years, he had 18.
Yeah. Yes, my total length of time as assistant or as director of youth and children's ministries and then assistant pastor and associate pastor is longer. All right. Go ahead and pass your votes. And so all of that does mean I do need to see the percentages when they get turned back to me so that I can complete my responsibilities. All right, we are back on page 26. The clerk's report is the entirety of the booklet that is in front of you. So Ethan Dunham, our clerk, who is also the graphic designer who put this together, he, in conjunction with ministry leaders, put together the report, and then he pulled pictures that came from those of you that volunteer, and put this together. He did a bunch of work formatting to make it much easier to read and digest the material that's here. In just kind of my pastoral introduction, there are a handful of things that are worth us remembering from 2025. For us as a family, like personally, we got to witness David and Leatrice's college graduation, their first jobs, but then this summer I had the absolute joy of officiating David and Leatrice's wedding out in western Pennsylvania. And we arrived, like, Laura was great with child when we arrived. 24 years ago this month, February, we came to interview. And Jim and Pat Brown were the first people that we told that Laura was pregnant. They found out before grandparents. Grandparents found out the next day. But as we were making the transition here, we had just found out that Laura was pregnant, and then by the time I completed my semester and we moved in the summer, we were ready for David's arrival that September of 2022. And to see a little boy, I told Leah when I started the sermon series, I said, I know how the sermon when we get to chapter 29 on Leah is going to end. It's going to end in tears. But today I get to baptize a little baby here. Like all 3 of my kids were baptized here. And he's like an adult with a real job who pays for all his own insurance and stuff. And you watched him grow up. You taught him in Sunday school. You tolerated him in Sunday school at times. But a joy for us as a family to have that, a full lifetime here. You have almost been stuck with me for half of my lifetime. like my birthday coming up this month, I'll be twice the age I was when you hired me. I don't know how that happened. Other exciting things that happened for us as a congregation in 2025, I mentioned that David Jardinier retired officially at the end of 2025 after 26 Christmas concerts. So his arm was twisted in 2000. We needed in a transition. Thank you, David and Marilee. And today's a day of encouragement because he was up here in the choir, and so exciting to see the musical legacy that's been so strong here at Faith continue. You even heard it in the treasurer's report of the refurbishment of the piano, the upcoming refurbishment of the organ that'll take place this year. Another big thing that happened in 2025, and it's been now February 1st, a full year, so it might feel like it's been a long time. But we hired Melissa Duggan as our new director of children's ministry. Anna Bird helped us in that transition that started in 2024 when Rob and Hannah headed south to Virginia Beach. And Anna helped build momentum in children's ministry. It wasn't like we just survived the interim. We had momentum coming into Melissa beginning. And it's been exciting to see the way children's ministry has expanded. Melissa's down with the kids right now, but on vacation, on VBS Sunday, we had 16 families join us in the worship service that don't normally worship here with us. With the luau party to connect them with the opportunity to sing and share one of their songs. Our family Christmas celebration, when Melissa walked into my office and explained it to me, I was like, I don't get it, but let's just do it. And then when I walked in the gym, with the whole thing decorated. I mean, they put an ice. I wanted to grab my hockey skates and start skating on the pond she'd put in the middle of the room. I thought, oh, now I get it. To walk families through the joys of Christmas, the memories of family celebrations, and to end with the gospel account of Jesus' arrival. Melissa expanded our connections with Urban Promise by doing inviting them to do some training for us, by doing some hospitality for them. And our 4th through 6th grade ministry missed this kind of exciting opportunity for not just in Kids Club on Wednesday nights, but monthly for families to make connections. It's been a joy to see that happen. I got to sneak in and go rock climbing with them at Dick's Sporting Goods last night for their missed event. They did the batting cages and the golf simulator. I was terrible at the golf simulator, but I did all right it helps that I start halfway up the climbing wall. But it's been neat to see children's ministry expand through this year. And so there are details about the members that were added or removed during the course of the year, the list of births and deaths. Certainly, as you remember those that pass on, we look at those names with sadness, but also in joy and gratitude, knowing that to find their names here means they are in the presence of Jesus upon their death. And so if there are questions, we have ministry leaders present who could answer questions if the clerk or I are unable to answer questions. But the clerk's report is before you as a congregation. So I need a motion to receive the clerk's report. I hear a motion. It needs a second. I see a second. Are there any questions about the clerk's report or additions or things that need to be updated in the report? All right. All those in favor of receiving the clerk's report, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no. All right. Our missions budget, you heard in the treasurer's report that one of the responsibilities, one of the great joys the missions committee has is distributing funds. Now, many of those funds are already established in the annual budget, but last year we had the opportunity to distribute an additional $50,000 to meet the needs of missionaries around the world. You do that by your extra gifts. So the extra money that you gave in 2025, $25,000 of that has been already put into that designated missions fund. The missions committee meets this month and will begin the process of making plans to distribute those funds. And then you give generously at other times. Our thank offering this past year was significant to meet the needs for Jim and Karen, who serve in West Africa but had to return to the United States in the midst of a medical emergency for one of their sons. And so when I was able to reach out to them and say, hey, here's a gift that's coming from Faith Church, and for them to say, that's an answer to prayer for God's people to come around them. In the overall missions details, remind me to look at this and to announce it. As you look at the missions part of the annual 2026 budget, so that's on page 33, let me just note a handful of the changes. These we communicated to you in December when we mailed you the 2026 budget. But we had the retirement of two long-serving missionary couples, Dal and Beth Stanton, who had most recently been serving on the MTW Ukraine team, so MTW Mission to the World, our denomination's mission sending agency. They'd previously served in Bulgaria and in Spain, and so they retired partway through the year. And then Richard and Robin Crane, who were based out of Miami and served throughout Latin America with a significant ministry in Cuba, partnering with Presbyterian churches there. They retired at the end of the year. We also saw Chris and Danette Brock returned from France to kind of meet ongoing family needs, and he is serving as a church planter in Florida. And so they were each removed from our budget, which means you see at the bottom of the overseas missionary column on page 33 that there are two missionary TBD. The missions committee has met and interviewed 3 different MTW missionary families with the goal of filling those 2 spots. So over the course of the coming weeks, we should be able to give you an update on the missionary families who will be added there. In the local missions category, you see that we added Great Exchange Church. That's the new church plant under the oversight of Reverend Tyler Brown, who previously served with InterVarsity and was supported by us. And they've had preview services. They plan to launch regular worship this year. And it's a new church plant within walking distance of the University of Delaware, so that with the thousands of students, that they can make a greater connection and greater impact on the college campus with a church that is walkable distance. I also noticed that we increased Pace Holdbrooks, who serves with RUF, Reformed University Fellowship, our denomination's campus ministry at the University of Delaware. We raised his support to be in line with the other RUF campus ministers that we support. Please continue to pray, particularly for Delaware State University. The RUF ministry, I heard an update at Presbyterian yesterday. The RUF ministry continues, but they are still searching for a campus minister. And Reverend Darrell Watley had been there, launched that ministry, had served there for 10 years. He now serves as a senior pastor in Fredericksburg, Virginia. And so they are looking for a campus minister. Their strong preference would be an African-American campus minister to make impact on that campus. Right now, it's being overseen by the elders at Grace Presbyterian Church. Pace Holdbrooks from RUF at UD has jumped in to help. But the 2 primary student leaders at Del State are graduating seniors, and so we are particularly burdened for Delaware State that we would see that campus ministry continue. When Darrell Watley was ordained to serve as the campus minister there, he was the first black campus minister to serve in RUF on a historically black university or college campus for our denomination. So a significant step for us as a denomination, but it continues to be an area where we as a denomination need to grow. So pray in particular for RUF at DSU, at Delaware State University. Are there questions about page 33, our missions budget and our missionary partnerships? All right. All right, then let me give you an overview of the remainder of the 2026 budget. Again, this isn't new to you in that you saw this in the middle of December, and we've had opportunity to answer questions as we've gone. You heard me, as we reflected on 2025, talk about the expanded children's ministry opportunities that are happening here at Faith Church. And so we have purposely increased both Vacation Bible School and children's ministry to reflect the growth of those ministries. You heard about the expanded music ministry. The session approved us spending that money last year, recognizing we should have already put that money back, like that money should have been added to the 2025 budget. You see, it's added to the 2026 budget so that we can continue to see growth there. In the personnel category, there's a cost of living increase for the church staff. There's also some adjustments to our part-time staff. I mentioned David Jardinaire's retirement. And then for the 2 full-time pastors, so for my family and for the Urick family, health insurance has gone up, and so which you know from your budgets at home, health insurance has gone up, and so the budget has risen to meet those needs. The other biggest area of increase is in the area of building maintenance and repairs and capital expenditures. As the session has and the deacons have worked to maintain facilities, the fact that I'm getting older and I arrived when you were just launching a new building project means, well, it turns out that's not such a new building project anymore. We are now at the life cycle that maintenance, even significant maintenance, is beginning to be expected on particularly the most used heat pumps in the building and those kinds of projects. So we are purposefully budgeting increases to continue to meet those needs so that the ongoing capital needs don't require a separate capital campaign. So that we have been working, the deacons have put together a plan so that each year you're contributing to the ongoing expenses rather than us need to pull together a significant capital expenses plan. So the 2026 budget is in front of you. Are there questions on any parts of the 2026 budget? I can enlist the help of deacons and elders who are in the room, of other staff to answer questions. Yes? Yeah, so the question is a question about energy, that we only raised that line item by a small amount, whereas you're seeing at home, both in terms of real bills and anticipated bills with changes in legislation. Yes, we were I think through most of the year expecting we were going to hit slightly under the budget number, and then numbers increase. So that will be an area, I think, of concern for the deacons. They're aware that, as you heard in the treasurer's report, that's our single biggest check that gets cut each month. So as the single sort of biggest monthly expense, it's something they track pretty closely. So I would not be surprised if the treasurer or assistant treasurer next year were making a report that said, as you experienced at home, our energy needs were higher than we had budgeted for, and so we'll have to make, the deacons will keep track of that monthly, and we'll, I don't know if any of the deacons want to jump in with further details. Good. Other questions? So the session has already approved the budget. So this is the budget we are working under already. But because the budget is overseen by our elders and deacons, but we expect you as a congregation to partner with us in this. I'm asking you to receive the 2026 budget. So I would entertain a motion to that effect. I see the motion in the back. It needs a second in the front or the back. Any additional questions or comments about the 2026 budget? All right, all those in favor of receiving the budget, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no. All right, we're going to say goodbye to those watching us on the live stream, because the officers. All right. Wait. Oh, okay. I was reading too fast. This is like that moment at the they pull out and they read off the wrong thing. So okay. So all 8 candidates received an overwhelming majority. All 8 candidates have been approved. We will schedule a time for the ordination of those candidates that need to be ordained and the installation of all of those candidates. So all 8 candidates have been approved with overwhelming majorities, including all of our deacon candidates receiving 100% approval from the congregation. So.